On this episode, two medical mysteries that defied the experts.
His nose appeared to be shrinking and getting almost more beak-like.
We started to realise that the doctors had not seen something like this before.
Sharon and John Crowther are on a desperate worldwide search for a doctor who can tell them why their son Harry is transforming before their eyes.
They knew there was something wrong with me, but they just didn't know what.
Then, Adam Brewer is the picture of health until a mysterious illness threatens to kill him within a matter of days.
It was a real struggle just to breathe.
I have never heard Adam cry like that. It scared me so much that my knees buckled and I went to the floor.
When illness strikes, we look to doctors to give us answers. But what if they can't? For these unlucky patients, diagnosis is a mystery.
Sharon Clough and John Crowther grew up near each other in West Yorkshire, England. But it wasn't until they were teenagers that they met and fell for each other.
I've known John since I was 15 years of age. I always knew I wanted to be with John. The minute I set eyes on him, yeah.
First impression of Sharon, she was young, loud, different, and that kind of got my eye.
But John had another girlfriend, so I had to fight that obstacle, and I did, and I won, and I got my man.
5 years later, in 1990, the young couple married and set about building a life together.
I always wanted children, straight away.
I always wanted to be a father, yes. First child was Emma. She was born in September 1993. And we knew after we had Emma, we just needed more and more. Second child is Jack. He was born in January 1996.
And just 3 years later, the Crowthers welcomed their third child into the world.
Harry was born in 1999 in February. To me, he just looked absolutely perfect.
For me, being a dad, it was great. I'd come home of an evening, put them to bed, and it was great.
The Crowthers couldn't be happier as they watch Harry meet all of his milestones right on time. Nothing could have prepared them for what happens one spring morning soon after his first birthday.
It was just a normal day. I was bathing Harry, lifted up his arms and noticed under one of his arms that he appeared to have what I thought was little tiny freckles. But they were quite spread out under his armpit, and they were like a pale brown colour, and I'd not seen anything like it before. Emma and Jack didn't have anything like that, so we knew we had to get him to the doctor. The dermatologist had a special lamp that he would use, which was like a UV light. He started off under his armpits and he slowly scanned the light, and then he concentrated mainly on Harry's stomach area, and as he shined the light over, there was a big patch on his stomach that you couldn't see to the naked eye. About half the size of an apple. Could only see it under the lamp.
We were getting quite worried now, and Jack and Emma were very inquisitive about what was going on with Harry, but we just said he's special and we just need to sort him out.
We were referred to the geneticist, and we went to see him, and that's when he mentioned a disorder called neurofibromatosis type 1.
Type 1 neurofibromatosis is a genetic condition that usually sets in during childhood. As it progresses, life-threatening tumors may develop throughout the body.
The doctor wanted to do a blood test to check to determine whether it was neurofibromatosis type 1. And at that point, I really did panic. The first thing you do is you go home and you look it up on the internet, which isn't a good thing to do because the internet always shows the worst-case scenario. So obviously you can imagine we just envisaged Harry being covered in these little tumours.
The waiting was quite traumatic. We pretty much feared the worst.
It was a couple of weeks, but as you can imagine, as parents, it felt forever. The geneticist called us back into his office. The test came back negative. So, as you can imagine, it was a big relief.
Over the next 2 years, the inexplicable spots begin to spread to new areas, and Harry undergoes test after test to no avail.
And we really didn't know what to do at that point.
We just needed somebody just to clarify what it was that he had.
While the odd markings are extremely worrisome, the Crowthers remain hopeful about their son's health, especially when it's clear he's a bright little boy.
He could hold a good conversation even as a 3-year-old. He was very bright.
And as far as mentally, he was brilliant. He's the funny little chap. He always been, you know, what we call bright as a button.
And in the fall of 2003, Harry begins preschool. It's an exciting time for the family, as Harry seems to revel in the experience. But just when they least expect it, a shocking new symptom begins to emerge.
He was getting ready to go to preschool, so you know, he was fighting to get dressed, and that's when I noticed it. The skin round his tummy seemed tight and shiny, and it just seemed as if somebody had almost grabbed him from behind and pulled his tummy really tight, as if he'd been fastened by a clip at the back of him.
Horrified by the transformation, the Crowthers set up yet another appointment with the geneticist. And over the next week, Harry endures a series of tests.
They were just testing to see if they could find a chromosome defect. He said that he still didn't have a clue as to what he thought it was, but that he was going to try his hardest to find out what it was that Harry had.
There was no abnormalities, but that just thickened the plot, so to speak.
I just knew something was terribly wrong. I would have given my right leg to find out what was wrong with Harry.
The geneticist started to speak to different colleagues across the UK. No one knew what was going to happen. We didn't, the doctors didn't. That just frustrated us.
It's a difficult time for the family as they wait helplessly for some explanation. Making matters worse, over the next year, Harry's body begins to change in even more bizarre ways.
The way his bones were forming, you could see something wasn't quite right. Harry had very small, almost non-existent collarbones.
And I remember thinking, whoever put Harry together, it kind of looked like they stuck his arms on in the wrong place and his chest didn't look quite right.
My name's Harry and I live in England, Murfield. Sometimes people that are rude and just stare at me. I don't like going out really, and that's why.
People could tell Harry was different. They would get their friend and pull their friend over to have a look. That's not nice for a little boy to see. We knew that something wasn't quite right. We wanted to find out what it was. We weren't prepared to just sit back and think that Harry just had to live like this. John and I needed to find answers. I needed to know what was wrong with Harry.
We started to realise that the doctors, even though they knew their field, had not seen something like this before.
It's a long and tedious process for the Crowthers, and over the next year, things begin to take a toll on the family.
Sharon was really tough. She was putting on a happy face for kids.
I think I was more worried about how Sharon was feeling. She seemed worried and distant, and there were times when she wouldn't really want to talk about it.
I think they were really worried about me. They knew there was something wrong with me, but they just didn't know what, and they wanted to find out what.
Over the past 6 years, Harry Crowther's body has mysteriously transformed, and no doctor can tell his parents why. And while Sharon and John Crowther have not given up hope that they will eventually track down an answer, they're forced to face a difficult reality. The children at school are beginning to notice just how different Harry is.
He started to get picked on. Harry now was realising he was different to most children now.
They wanted to know what was wrong with him. You just tried to ignore them.
Everybody has a different appearance. I'm just like them, really.
Harry's a tough cookie, and even when he's down, he just picks himself up.
We love Harry for who Harry is.
While Sharon and John do the best they can to help Harry feel normal, they can't help but notice that his body is continually transforming.
When we first noticed changes in his face, his nose appeared to be shrinking and getting almost more beak-like. He's always had beautiful blue eyes, but they seem to be getting more protruding. And as his teeth were growing, his teeth seemed to be all trying to squeeze into a small mouth, so he had a lot of overcrowding in his mouth.
And just before Harry's 7th birthday, it's all too clear that the mysterious disease he's living with has taken on a life of its own. Terrified by the rapid pace with which it's attacking his body, the Crowthers demand an explanation.
The geneticists did think it was something called MAD, which is mandibuloacral dysplasia.
Mandibuloacral dysplasia, or MAD, is a genetic disorder characterized by a receding chin, very little body fat, and small collarbones and fingers. MAD is irreversible, and many patients go on to experience heart problems and a shortened lifespan.
When we researched mandibuloacral dysplasia, we came across a website of a little boy who really looked like Harry, but the geneticists wanted to do a blood test to check.
The next week is almost unbearable for the family as they wait for the findings to come in.
Harry tested negative for the mandibuloacral dysplasia. And when the tests come back to say it wasn't that was a big shock.
Back at square one, the Crowthers insist that the geneticist help them track down someone who can shed some light on their son's baffling condition. A few weeks later, he has the name of a doctor who may be able to help Harry.
The geneticist said that he knew of a doctor in Dallas, Texas that would be able to finally tell us what was wrong with Harry.
Travelling so far wasn't a problem. We got to a stage now where we had to find some answers, and then we'd go to the moon to find those answers. It didn't matter.
I got an email from a geneticist in the United Kingdom asking my opinion about Harry's condition. We had seen other children with similar problems that Harry was presenting with, but Harry's case was very perplexing, and that's why I encouraged them to consider visiting us in Dallas so that I could have a chance to personally evaluate him here. When we evaluated him, he had freckles on his body, he had shiny, tight skin on his hands, and he had some sharp features on his face, a little bit pointed nose and small mandible.
Dr. Garg was really nice, and he came to have a look at me, ran some tests. Some of the tests were really weird, where they had to put me in a tank. They slowly filled it up with water.
We conducted underwater weighing to find out how much body fat he has.
Harry had a DEXA scan that measures bone density.
Finally, after reviewing all of the test results, Dr. Garg is confident he knows the name of the disease Harry is living with.
I think both John and I had a mixture of excitement and apprehension. I knew that we had to be brave.
The clinical features that I saw in Harry and the results of the genetic testing confirmed that we were dealing with atypical progeroid syndrome.
Atypical progeria syndrome is a genetic disorder that presents with premature aging. In healthy individuals, cells are constantly renewed to replace dying cells, helping to maintain healthy tissue throughout the body. But in patients like Harry, a genetic mutation interrupts this process, leading to accelerated aging.
Atypical progeroid syndrome is extremely rare, with only 30 patients reported so far in the world literature.
Harry's disorder is similar to another genetic disease, progeria. But atypical progeria patients have some symptoms of progeria and not others. And no two patients with atypical progeria are alike.
Everyone will have different manifestations or clinical features. Why, we don't know.
However, it's now all too clear that each of the symptoms Harry has experienced so far is a direct result of the genetic mutation. He is aging 5 times faster than normal.
To finally have a diagnosis for Harry was a big relief, but equally it was frustrating that he could only say what he thought might happen, because each patient obviously goes through it differently. You know, your worst fear is you don't know how long your child's got to live.
While the average lifespan for a child with classical progeria is 13, experts are more optimistic about Harry's future.
The fact it's atypical means his life expectancy is much, much longer, which is really, really good, and we're very happy about that.
So we just have to remain positive. Ultimately, it doesn't affect their mental state. As they get older, their body gets older, they don't deteriorate mentally, which is an absolute blessing.
With Dr. Garg's help, the Crowthers begin to understand how the debilitating disease will eventually slow Harry down.
There is no cure for atypical progeroid syndrome at this time.
He knew that Harry would probably suffer with problems with his joints, problems with his heart.
And we can take a preemptive approach there to handle those manifestations even before they appear.
Today, despite the changes his body continues to undergo, Harry is a bright and happy 11-year-old boy.
It makes me age 5 times faster, so I'm 11 now, so my bones will be 55 years old.
Harry said to me, "Grandma, guess what? You and I are the same age inside." I said, "Oh, no, not really. I'm a bit older than you." But it was Harry's way of understanding what atypical progeria syndrome means to him. He thinks it's amazing.
To not have a precedent of what to expect with Harry has been tough. Since being diagnosed, he's developed arthritis in his knees, his elbows, his fingers, his toes. He sees an occupational therapist, a physiotherapist. All the doctors are monitoring Harry closely.
And so I just know how to look after myself now. I have to be careful of contact sport like football, rugby, because I get hurt really easily.
Harry's where he should be at school. He's achieving all his milestones academically. He's got so many friends from all ages, and he never complains. He just is an upbeat little boy.
Everybody loves him. He's cheeky, he's fun, he's really a good character to be around. Very funny chap.
I think atypical progeria syndrome that Harry has is what makes Harry, Harry. And I wouldn't swap him.
The key message for us was you've got to keep trying to piece the puzzle together. And if you ask the right questions enough times, you will get the right answer.
There is somebody out there to help. Just ask, keep asking, keep asking, keep asking.
It took us 6 years of trying and trying, and we had an answer.
Harry's my hero. He's been an absolute star through all this, and he's an inspiration. And I love him.
I feel happy most of the time. I can't stop smiling.
Next, Adam Brewer is in a desperate fight for his life when his heart and lungs begin to suddenly shut down. In the spring of 2007, 18-year-old Adam Brewer was finishing his senior year of high school in the suburbs of St. Louis, Missouri. His parents were divorced, making Adam the man of the family. He often helped his mother care for his 3 sisters.
I was getting them to games on time, cooking them dinner, putting them to bed, and making sure they had all their clothes ready for the next morning, so when my mom got home, she didn't have to do that.
I am a parish secretary at a Catholic church, St. Angela Mercy, and in the evening I work part-time as a waitress at a restaurant.
When my mom took on that second job, I was really proud of her. It made me want to help out more because I knew she was struggling.
After graduating from high school, Adam starts attending community college. And the summer before his sophomore year, he takes a break from his responsibilities, going on a rafting trip with his friends.
We went down on a Friday night, just barbecuing, hanging out with friends. We fished throughout the day, went hiking, played in the water. Just being outside for me is real important.
Adam returns from the trip completely relaxed. And a month later, the fall semester begins.
I realized that this was a big year for me. I needed to do well to start setting my standards for what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
But only a few weeks into the term, Adam is sitting in a math class when he's hit by an overwhelming wave of nausea.
I was nauseous to where I had to leave the class. And when I got into the restroom, I had a really bad case of diarrhea. Originally, I thought maybe I ate something bad or drank something that wasn't totally right. That night, I woke up in the middle of the night sweating really bad, as if I had just broken a fever. So I thought I was back to normal.
But over the next week, Adam finds that he's in and out of the bathroom constantly and starts to worry about his health.
Adam came to me and I was a little bit concerned, and I said, you know, if this is still going on, you really should probably take yourself to the doctor.
He told me that there was stomach bugs going around, nothing too serious. He prescribed me with some antibiotics that were supposed to cure my symptoms within the next 2 to 3 days.
Sure enough, the problem clears up quickly. But a few days later, on a Sunday afternoon when Adam is playing kickball, an alarming incident occurs.
I was at a recreational kickball league that I play in. I wasn't able to run more than 15, 20 steps without having to stop and bend over, and it was a really struggle just to breathe. And the umpire stopped the game to tell me that he wanted me to sit out because he didn't feel right letting me run around the bases. And that really upset me because I was used to being able to play at a level with everybody else.
By the time Adam gets home that night, his condition has deteriorated so drastically that he can barely make it up the stairs.
He said, I'm really short of breath. I think I'm getting asthma. And I said, Adam, I don't think this is caused from asthma. I think there's something else going on. So we went back to the doctor. The first thing the doctor did was listen to Adam's chest with a stethoscope.
He told me to go down the hall and to get a chest x-ray. And I could tell by the look on his face that there was something going on.
The doctor came back into the office pretty quick and said, Adam, you have double pneumonia.
Pneumonia is an infection of the lungs, commonly caused by a virus. Shortness of breath and fever are typical symptoms. If left untreated, it can lead to organ failure, permanent lung damage, and even death.
The doctor told me that I had needed to go home and get as much sleep and rest as possible. Told me I should not be going to class, should not be working, should not doing any physical activities that would exert myself. He really didn't even want me walking up the stairs. He told me that it was a serious condition and that I should just get as much sleep and rest as possible.
And he said, I'd like to do some blood work to see if there's anything else going on, just to be sure. I got a phone call very early the next morning from the doctor with the blood test results. He wanted Adam at the hospital immediately. I broke down because I think it had really hit me that Adam has an illness that could be really bad right now.
When my mom attempted to wake me up, I was really exhausted and tired. I did not want to get up at all.
His reaction was, we'll go later, let me sleep a couple more hours. And I said, no, Adam, we have to go to the emergency room now. The doctor wants you there now. That was the first time that I was really, really worried.
As soon as they arrive at the hospital, the doctor explains that Adam's blood work results are highly abnormal. He's not sure what's going on and immediately orders a CT scan. The findings are nothing short of shocking.
The doctor told us that the fluid around my lungs and heart was contracting it and it could compromise it, so we would have to have an emergency operation to relieve that pressure and the fluid around it.
Adam's lungs are severely inflamed, and as the fluid continues to build up rapidly in his chest, a heart attack is possible at any moment.
When I heard that, I was a mess. I didn't know if Adam was going to live or die.
20-year-old Adam Brewer has just learned that he's suffering from a severe case of double pneumonia. Potentially life-threatening levels of fluid are flooding his chest cavity, and it's only a matter of time before his heart starts to shut down. With the clock ticking, the medical team performs an emergency procedure to prevent Adam from going into cardiac arrest.
It was just so overwhelming because it came on so traumatically and everything happened so fast.
He told us that they were gonna go in, put a tube in around my heart, and drain out as much fluid as possible. I was really nervous, didn't understand how this could happen.
I thought my 20-year-old son is in having a procedure on his heart, and he could die from this. I stayed at the hospital all day, from morning till night, and my family would bring the girls out to visit him because they wanted to see him as much as possible. They wanted their big brother to be healthy again, and I felt like I was so helpless.
I could see it in their eyes that they were scared if something serious could happen, if I wasn't going to be back at the house to help them ever again.
Over the next couple of days, the doctors continuously drain the deadly fluid. But nothing they do keeps it at bay.
When doctor after doctor after doctor continued to tell us that they did not know why his heart and lungs filled up with fluid, I was very frustrated.
They just kept coming back with more and more tests that needed to be run. They'd all come back negative, negative, negative. I mean, you depend on these people to tell you what is wrong with you. And at this time, they had no idea.
I felt like I was supposed to be the one that was finding someone to fix Adam. And I was getting very frustrated, and I felt very sad for Adam that I couldn't do that for him.
As Peggy watches helplessly, the medical team continues to run test after test, hoping to find some clue. Then, 7 days after Adam was admitted, the results of his latest round of blood work turned the case upside down.
When the doctor came in and talked to us about how high my white blood cell count was, she seemed really alarmed.
The accumulation of white blood cells indicates that Adam may be suffering from leukemia, a potentially deadly cancer of the bone marrow and blood.
The doctor decided that I needed to have a bone marrow biopsy taken to see if there was any chance that I had leukemia.
When the doctor told me that Adam might have leukemia, I could not believe that this was happening to my son. I thought, there's no way, this cannot be. It was very scary because to me, leukemia was something that Adam could die from. It was probably the scariest thing I've ever been through in my entire life.
She basically got on top of me and had to stick a needle into the side of my hip that went all the way down into the bone. It was one of the most painful experiences that I've had in my life.
I've never heard my son cry like that. My knees buckled and I went down to the floor and I was a mess. I was so scared for him.
During the week waiting for the bone marrow biopsy results, I tried to keep my mind off of, but it was tough to fall asleep thinking that there was a chance that it could come back positive. I just wanted them to come as quickly as possible.
I realized that at that time that Adam may have a life-threatening disease, and this might be, this might be the end of his life.
When it finally came to the day of, it hit me that there was a chance that this could be positive, and I almost did not want to find out.
When the doctor came in and said, okay, I have the results of your bone marrow biopsy, it's negative for leukemia, I was so relieved. And Adam said, yeah, but Mom, now we still don't know what it is.
Desperate for answers, Peggy scours the internet for specialists and finally comes across pulmonologist Dr. Lee Demertzis at Barnes Jewish Hospital. When he agrees to take on Adam's case, Peggy makes arrangements to transfer her son immediately.
When I met Dr. Demertzis, he convinced me that there were answers. He was very calming, and he was very confident in his work.
I could see all the testing that was done, and this helped me get a fresh perspective on what might be going on with Adam. The most important question to ask Adam and his mother were, in their words, to describe how this illness had evolved from the first time that Adam felt sick until the day that I met him in the clinic.
He just seemed very, very concerned with everything as a whole, saying that everything was all caused from one problem.
Putting the pieces together, Dr. Demertzis suspects he knows what Adam is suffering from. But to confirm his hunch, he must send a blood sample to the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control.
During the week, waiting for the result, my shortness of breath was still holding me back from a lot.
I was so scared because I thought this was going to go on, until Adam couldn't breathe anymore. And I was afraid that he wasn't going to be able to get over this.
The day that I was supposed to get the results back, it hit me that there's a chance I could have some type of awful disease.
The week is almost unbearable as they wait for the findings to come in. And when they arrive, Dr. Demertzis sits down with them to review the verdict.
I told Adam and his mother about the blood test results and confirmed that Adam had paragonomyosis.
Paragonomyosis is an infection caused by the Paragonomus parasite. In some cases, the body's immune system is able to defend itself against parasites that enter the body. But in patients like Adam, the Paragonomus parasite overwhelms the body's defenses and multiplies inside the lungs. This can result in shortness of breath and a deadly buildup of fluid in the chest cavity.
The parasite is acquired by a human by eating raw or undercooked crustaceans, usually crabs or crawfish. Adam probably ate a crawfish that was just chock full of parasite, and it was just too much for his body to overcome.
After finding out that eating the undercooked crawfish had caused all these problems, I was very unhappy with myself.
I could not believe that a parasite, something that was so small you could not even see it with your eye, had caused so much damage to so many organs in Adam's body.
When the parasite was burrowing through the wall of his intestine, it was irritating his intestines and causing him to have diarrhea and flu-like symptoms and night sweats. When the parasite got up into his lungs and started irritating the lung, it caused Adam to feel short of breath. As part of the body's response to try to fight off this infection with a parasite, fluid built up around Adam's lungs and around his heart as well. Once the parasite makes it into the lungs, it's a very nice environment for the parasite to live and get all the nutrients that it needs to survive and to reproduce. So an adult worm can live inside a lung for up to 20 years and continue to produce eggs.
It's now all too clear that Adam's high white blood cell count was an unmistakable sign that a parasite had taken hold of his body.
The reason that white blood cell counts are high in people who have infections with parasites is that white blood cells are used to try to help the body kill the parasites.
But in Adam's case, the parasite had inundated his system, and it was only a matter of time before the infection would have caused irreversible problems.
If the parasite moves into the brain, it can cause a variety of symptoms, such as paralysis, seizures, and in the worst case scenario, if there's a significant amount of inflammation and swelling of the brain, it could even result in death.
Fortunately, this particular type of parasite can be completely wiped out. Dr. Demertzis immediately starts Adam on an intense course of medication.
Dr. Demertzis told me that I was going to have to take anti-parasite pills for 2 days, 15 pills a day, and then I would start to see improvements in all my symptoms within a week or two. Within 2 days, I felt completely back to 100%.
Adam won't have any lasting effects from this infection and will feel good as new.
While the Brewers are thrilled by Adam's recovery, they can't help but wonder why no one was able to recognize the disease sooner.
I think the main reason that it took so long to come up with the diagnosis in Adam's case is that paragonomyosis in somebody who lives in the United States and hasn't traveled elsewhere is incredibly rare. This disease is almost always diagnosed in China and Southeast Asia. In fact, up until 2009, there are only 7 reported cases of paragonomus in North America from people who had not traveled abroad or eaten imported foods.
I always saw crawfish as a little minuscule animal in the river. Never thought it could do this much damage to the human body.
Today, Adam is a healthy 21-year-old who is determined to live his life to the fullest.
I am playing sports, working, doing everything I was doing before this whole sickness. It feels great to be back to 100%.
I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't think, do you remember when you thought Adam could die? And I try to look at that and live my life that way with all of my kids and appreciate them every single day.
Without the support of my family, I don't think I would have made it. We now are a stronger family than we were before.
I don't think you realize how lucky you are until you go through something this scary.
This experience has given me a deeper respect and gratitude for the medical field, and it's only pushed me more to want to join. I'm now in my junior year of school, and I'm taking classes towards becoming an emergency medical technician.
One lesson that I learned from the experience with Adam's illness is don't ever give up.
Although it's frustrating to keep receiving negative results, it's better to try than just to give up.